Yep, that's me. You may be wondering how I got into this situation. Let's go all the way back to an hour ago. So today I'm going to be walking myself through a 1-hour pizza recipe that I found from Nick at Exercise4CheatMeals. He comes up with these lower calorie versions of foods, and I've tried a few of his recipes and I think he does a great job. And he actually drew inspiration for this recipe from Brian Lagerstrom's video, which is a full calorie 1-hour pizza. So I'm going to use my phone to time myself just to see how close to an hour I can get all this done in. I did kind of cheat and get a head start by taking everything out, but recipes never include that in the actual cooking time, which I think they should, but regardless. So it's a little after 5 p.m. and I'm just going to go ahead and start this. So first things first, we're going to use beer, which kind of helps this to be a 1-hour pizza. It kind of gives that fermented flavor in the pizza. I don't drink, so I've never actually bought beer before, so it was kind of weird, but let's see what happens. There we go. I'm just going to heat this up in the microwave for a few seconds. And now it's nice and warm, so I'm going to go ahead and start making the dough. Of course, if you are wanting to do this, I'm not going to go through all the recipe here. I'm going to let you go watch either of these two videos that I'm going to link in the description. Starting with some flour. Now there are a couple of weird ingredients that I didn't have, which is the dry malt powder and this vital wheat gluten. And this is for the low calorie version, but I just went and got these on Amazon. In with the wheat gluten. Of course, we need dry yeast for this recipe as well. Some salt and a touch of garlic powder. And then finally some of this diastatic malt powder. Almost forgot the olive oil. So we're just going to whiz that up for a little bit to get everything combined. And then I'm just going to stream in the warm beer to hydrate the dough and to form everything together into a ball. And there we go. I'm just going to break this into a couple of dough balls and knead them for just a second before we rest them. So yeah, this is going to be enough to make 2 pizza doughs. I'm just going to save one for probably tomorrow and let it ferment some more in the fridge. Yeah, so it gives off that beer aroma. I've done some fermented doughs in the past for pizza, and once you take them out and you smell them, they smell just like beer, which I guess makes sense because they're fermenting. So I'm going to cut this in roughly half, and then I just need to let them finish hydrating and rest for about 15 minutes under this lightly dampened kitchen towel, and I'll clean this up in the meantime. And 15 minutes later, I've got some more hydrated dough. Like I said, I'm going to take one of these and just put it in a container in the fridge overnight so I can have it tomorrow. Also at this point, I'm going to grab my pizza stone and stick it in my oven and preheat it to the hottest temperature it goes, which is 550 F. That by the time we bake, there's enough heat in the oven to cook this pizza in enough time. And yes, I'm using a pizza stone and not a steel because that's what I bought like a year ago. A pizza stone is something that you get if you want to go through the trouble of buying a pizza steel, but you want something that's just not as good. So yeah, just learn from my mistake. Next on the agenda is getting a couple sheets of parchment paper. We're going to get those lightly coated with some olive oil spray. Then I'm going to grab my dough ball here and start to form it, to flatten it out a little bit. I'm going to place it on the center of my first sheet, onto which I will place my second sheet. Then using a rolling pin, I'm just lightly going to press it out into a flat circle. I'm going to try to get this somewhere in the ballpark of 14 inches, which is the size of my pizza stone. So not my best work, but this is roughly a pizza shape. So our next task is to carefully remove the top parchment layer, and then we're just going to rest this for about 30 more minutes before we build it and bake it. In the meantime, we can get the rest of our ingredients prepped. Luckily, I have the perfect amount of sauce already prepared. I've done a lot of pizza recipes in the past, and I have a lot of pre-portioned sauces in my freezer, so that was good to go. So first up with my part skim mozzarella, just grating that up. And then just the remaining amount in fat-free mozzarella. So Nick has also made a lower calorie version of Adam Ragusia's pan pizza, and he did the same thing in that pizza where he puts a bottom layer of fat-free cheese and then covers it in this part skim cheese. So what happens is the fat-free cheese does not melt very well, and if you put it in the oven, it'll really start to burn before it gets to a good consistency. But if you hide it under the layer of this part skim mozzarella, it all kind of melts together really well, and this top layer browns well. And I think it's a genius idea, so I like it. And lastly, just our pepperoni slices. I'm going with real pepperoni. I don't mind the taste of turkey pepperoni, but my supermarket just didn't have it at the time, and I can afford the extra calories in this case, so I'm going with regular pepperoni. So everything's ready to go. I will be back in a few minutes when it's time to build the pizza. 30 minutes later, and it's time to finally build this thing. I'm gonna start with that sauce that I have thawed out. I love tomato sauce with San Marzano tomatoes, nothing like it. And then just a quick underlayer of Parmigiano Reggiano, followed by our fat-free cheese. We make sure this one goes on the bottom and doesn't get mixed with the other cheese because, like I said, this stuff will burn and not melt properly. But it's definitely good to have it in the recipe because it is very low in calories compared to the other type of cheese, and it's high in protein, so you get a lot more volume for the amount of calories that you're eating. Now our part skim mozzarella on top, trying to make sure I get even distribution. Finally, our pepperonis evenly distributed as well. I just like to put a little oregano and some flaky sea salt on top. I do that on all my pizzas just because I love the taste of it. So I know I'm not doing it exactly like the Exercise for Cheat Meals recipe, but I've already made a bunch of changes, so I'm not going to be accurate here. Oh well. Now we slide that up onto our pizza peel. I mean, that does look pretty good for this little amount of work that we had to do and for the amount of calories and macros that we're going to get out of this pizza. So I believe the recipe advertised an hour from the mixing bowl to the oven. So this is where I'm going to stop my timer, and I am at an hour and 1 minute here. So it's right on the nose. I'll admit I did cheat a little bit because I cut a little bit of my resting times by a couple minutes, but I think it's going to be fine. And I also, got my ingredients out at the beginning, but again, it's not a big deal. This is still a very short amount of time for a good pizza that we're hopefully going to taste. So into the oven we go. And here we are. I had to turn this fan on because the pizza stone will set off my smoke alarm. I'm just going to get this over to a rack for a minute just to let it finish cooling off for a second, but to keep the bottom of the crust nice and crispy. You can see how nicely the pizza stone browned up the bottom of the crust, something that you don't really get as much unless you're using a stone or a steel. So I wasn't perfect with my circle here, but let's see what the best way to cut this is. We'll do 6 slices. I mean, she's got the looks. All that's left to do is taste. Like I said, not the best browning on the bottom, but it's definitely better than just baking it on its own in the oven. So the stone does help. Here we go. All right, that is great. The flavor profile is the same as the pan pizza that I've already tried from Exercise for Cheat Meals because the fat-free cheese, the sauce, and the part skim cheese are all the same. And that layering, I mean, that's what you get with pizza anyway, but I'm very used to that flavor profile. But the difference is in the crust, and the main difference that I'm tasting is the beer. So you immediately get that fermented taste. It does taste a little artificial, like you manufactured it in some way, which we did, instead of doing like a full ferment for your dough. But I don't think it's a bad taste by any means. It tastes really good. Yeah, it's very powerful. And I'm definitely a thin crust kind of guy in most cases. So I do like how all this plays out together, and it holds up pretty well for a pizza. It's really remarkable that this could be done in the short amount of time that we did it and have this amount of flavor while we're still accounting for the calories like we're doing. Yeah, do some flaky sea salt on your pizza. When you get a bite of that with the pepperoni, it's perfect. So this is definitely a winner for me. Now with feasibility, with my schedule, it's actually better for me to do the pan pizza, for instance, because I can make that dough during the day. I have a little more free time during the day, and I teach classes at night. So I get home pretty late. So I don't want to spend an hour making something. I want it to be already made, or at least in the process of being made with the dough rising while I'm gone. But with most people's schedules and with something this simple, I think this is a great staple to have in your diet. I still want to try the Brian Lagerstrom version with the full calories, but this is a great stand-in, and this will knock out any pizza craving that you have. So good job, Nick, on this video. Please do go check out both of their channels and videos because they do great cooking content in general. But with that said, if you stuck around this far, I do appreciate you watching, and I will see you all next time.